An introduction to ANSI Scalar Functions. What are scalar functions and how do they work? Built-in functions automate common processes and are identified either as column functions or as scalar functions. Column functions perform an operation on a column value of each selected row and returns one value for all rows. Scalar functions can be used to manipulate numbers, strings, and date and time types, as well as retrieve system information. When performing an operation on a column value of each selected row, it returns a value for each row. Scalar functions can be used in a select, where, or having clause. Because a scalar function returns a value for each row, it can be included with other selected column or calculations, but it cannot be intermixed with column functions. A scalar function consists of the function name followed by a pair of parentheses. Inside the parentheses is an argument, which is usually a column name or another scalar function. The ANSI standard supports a number of useful functions. However, over the years, the various relational database vendors have implemented functions that were missing from the then existing SQL standard. These functions were developed and implemented differently by each vendor. Eventually, the SQL ANSI Standard Committee saw a community-wide need for a function and picked a standard which may or may not have matched the vendor's version. Once the standard had been established, it would normally take several years for the vendors to adopt and implement these new standards. Therefore, each database vendor maintains a large number of their own functions that are outside the scope of the SQL ANSI standard before the vendor has implemented the new standard. Many of these non-standard functions have been identified in the notes of this course. See the documentation of your vendor's relational database system for details. Some scalar functions retrieve data from the operating system, such as current date, current time, and user ID. These system data functions can be included with normal table queries. When retrieving only system data, some relational database systems do not require a from clause, but there are these exceptions. For DB2, add the clause from sysibm.sysdummy1. For Oracle, add the clause from dual. Here are three examples of scalar functions to extract the year from the due date. The first example just extracts the year from every accounts payable table due date row. The second example extracts the year from every accounts payable table due date row where that row has a due date year equals 2051. The third example is just like example 2, except it uses the keyword having instead of where. The result of scalar functions do not have headings in the result table because they are not existing and unmodified columns in the base table. A scalar argument can be column name or a column function or another scalar function. Null values that are used in a scalar function will result in a null value. If actual values are to be returned, then the column must be identified as not null with default, so that the default of 0 or spaces will be used in the scalar function, or a value scalar function may also be used for this purpose. We hope you found this information useful. Please come visit us at computerbasedtraininginc.com for courses with more examples and labs where you create and execute complete commands.